Good evening. This is Lib. I'm sharing with you a prayercast tonight about creativity and art. Here you see a quilt I made years ago. Was for my oldest nephew's graduation from high school. I'd had enough of words and writing and pages and books and decided I needed to find my art. I'd always wanted to create and make quilts. This was the first big one I have done. I picked out the colors that I thought he would like. He also enjoys the beach. Here are sea turtles in it because we enjoy as a family going to the beach. It's back with me for repairs. It's much loved and much used and much worn. And it has a few spots where it needs repairs, so he sent it back to me. It's connected me to my faith in so many ways. Here are a few quotes that also mean something to me, and then I'll tell you a story. Madeleine L'Engle said, "I need sacraments. I need symbols. I need questions that do not have answers." Bell Hooks is one of my favorite teachers who now lives in Kentucky at her home place, moving there from New York City where she used to teach. And she says that creativity is not quiet. The root meaning of the word ecstasy is to stand outside. That's what creativity does. It allows the creator to move beyond the self into a place of transcendent possibility, that place in the imagination where all is possible. Bob McGovern is an artist who talks about the journey as a struggle to reconcile the mysterious aspects of life with its pragmatic side. He recommends focusing over the little things in life, the drift, as he calls them, rather than the big things. Everyone focuses on the river, but we also need to pay attention to the drift. Paying attention to the drift is this artist's way of saying that God is in the details. Paying attention to the drift is thoughtful advice for spiritual explorers. It means observing the currents that carry one along. Whether, for instance, one becomes entranced by the latest spiritual fads or grows so serious about one's faith that life itself slips from view. An artistic approach to spirituality recognizes the need to settle in, rather than being swayed by a consumer mentality. For years in Chicago and now here in Nashville, I've taught a course called God, Faith, and Art, where I help students connect with their own life of faith, their own spiritual formation, and the places in their life where God speaks to them. As a teacher, I simply get out of the way. I invite them into readings and reflections and a few short papers, but the majority of the class focuses on their art. They choose a medium that they want to work in, and they have 2 weeks to create a project that they then share with the class. The last time I taught the class, it was an incredible group of creative students. And it came to the last day for the last sharing. And one student was texting me saying, "I need a copier. My copier doesn't work. I'm at the library's not open. I don't know what to do." And it was his day to present. He finally walked in. He followed students who had done these incredible projects. A handmade book bound in a Japanese style with 26 poems of lament and longing, written in different forms of poetry following an acrostic. He followed a student who had done a cut paper collage illustrating the city as a space for encountering God. Another one who had created a journal using different mediums to illustrate one verse from each chapter of the Gospel of John. And yet another who had an unfinished mixed media piece using wire and paper to connect with Job 14. And music with original translations connecting 8 favorite hymns. He sat down in front with nothing in his hands. He took a deep breath and said he had tried to copy something, but the copy was not working. He took another breath and said, "After I saw what you all had created, I began to be really worried, but I talked with my brother and he said, 'You tell really good stories. Why don't you make them laugh?' So I have some stories for you." As he said that, I was finally able to breathe and not be anxious. and worried about what was going to happen. I always want my students to succeed. I want them to connect their faith and their life and their art. And I really had no idea what he was going to do. So he picked up his phone with his tiny little screen, and he scrolled down, and he invited us to listen. He invited us into his life with these words: I want you to hear by listening. Each story was concluded with the refrain, I see first with my ears, or I listen first with my ears. We listened and we laughed. This quiet introvert revealed more about himself in his stories than he had the whole class. When I think about creativity and art, the last thing I do on my quilts is the binding. Though everything is stitched on a machine, the binding is done by hand. It's that following the drift that the artist talked about, paying attention to the drift. And as I do the binding by hand, I think about the person who's going to receive the quilt, and I pray for their life, and I pray for all good things. It reminds me of Psalm 23, and I'll close with this. I'm reading from Pamela Greenberg's translation of the Psalm 23 in her book, The Complete Songs, the book of prayer songs in a new translation. God is my shepherd. There is nothing I lack. You lay me down in lush meadows. You guide me toward tranquil waters, reviving my soul. You lead me down paths of righteousness, for that is your way. And when I walk through the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in face of my greatest fears. You drench my head with oil. My cup overflows the brim. Surely goodness and kindness will accompany me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the holy for the length of my days. May God bless you richly this evening. Amen.